So today I wanted to sort of commemorate my favorite film as it is the 30th anniversary of this really weird, crazy, wonderful film. I'm sort of under the impression that anybody that's watched my channel for an extended period of time by this point has seen Labyrinth, since I do mention it with some frequency and have made it very clear that it is my favorite movie. And if you haven't seen it yet, please do. You are missing out. It's one of the weirdest films I've ever seen in some respects, but it's also my absolute favorite. So I have been a big fan of Brian Froud since I was a kid, and I collect a lot of his books, and this is one of my favorites. Illustrated by him and written by Terry Jones, who also wrote the script for Labyrinth. A Monty Python vet wrote the script for Labyrinth. Might explain why it's a little bit hokey and strange sometimes. Now, this painting down at the bottom was kind of the initial start of it. So Brian Froud and Jim Henson had worked together on The Dark Crystal in 1982. It did not do terribly well, which I partially blame on E.T. coming out the following week. But it was a beautiful, crazy, slightly frightening film, and Jim and Brian sort of decided, we should make another thing, and it'll be an adventure story about a young girl and growing up and all of that nice visual metaphor. And Brian Froud painted this in, I think, 1984 or 1985, and he ended up giving it to Jim Henson. And it's called Toby and the Goblins, and it was kind of the basis of the entire film early on. And then about a year later, his son Toby was born, who ended up playing the baby within the film. And it was kind of the early basis of it. I have always loved Brian Froud's illustrations. They were very, very beautiful and very, very ethereal looking. They really do look like the Fae are often described, not the little fluffy bunny kind of Fae, but the sort of darker, mischievous type, which is one of the things I also appreciate about Labyrinth, is that there is a heavy amount of European folklore and mythology embedded in it. The costumes are very well detailed, the puppets are very well done, and everything looks pretty believable and very supernatural, so they really are creatures instead of just puppets, and they look significantly more believable than a lot of CG I've ever seen. So upon its release in June of 1986, it wasn't really a big hit. But it did make a big splash over the course of several years when it came to video rentals. It was constantly rented out through Blockbusters and mom and pop stores and Hollywood Videos throughout the 90s. It was very popular as a rental, even if it wasn't in its initial theatrical run. And I am the type of person who's weird enough to go on eBay and buy myself a Christmas present of this on VHS, because why not? Especially if you already have it on DVD that has the documentary that everybody should watch because it's great. And I have the type of friends that would find me an original video store display at Labyrinth. That pops up, and you would wrap around a cash register, because I am a nerd, and I'm glad that my friend gave this to me. So one of the things that I thought was, of course, one of the title characters and one of the two main live actors that weren't puppets would, of course, be the wonderful, magical David Bowie. And at the back of this is a note from Brian Froud instead of just Goblin classification written by Terry Jones. That's all rather strange and comedic. But there was a note talking about the ideas when he and Jim Henson were initially coming up with this film, and it was talking about the Goblin King. As we moved deeper into the concept of the film, Jim felt strongly that he wanted a charismatic figure to play the Goblin King. We all agreed that David Bowie, with his protean persona, was perfect for the part. We needed an actor who not only could be fully immersed in the dream world of the Labyrinth, but also could, as a famous personality, bring to the part deep resonances in our real world. This is the key to Jareth the Goblin King's character. He is Sarah's inner fantasy, a figure made up of her daydreams and nightmares. I strove to reflect this in Jareth's costume. He is seen through her eyes as part dangerous goblin, part glamorous rock star. I designed him a riding cop scepter, a visual echo of a microphone. Look carefully, and you will see references to the romantic figures of Heathcliff from Wuthering Heights, and a brooding Rochester from Jane Eyre. He is also a transfigured Scarlet Pimpernel. Jareth is the proud lord of the manor, lord to his goblin domain, with his hounds at his feet, ready to go hunting for human souls. His leather jacket indicates that he is a rebel, an outsider, and dangerous. He is Brando in the Wild Ones. He is a knight from Grimm's fairy tales, with the worms of death eating through his armor. In short, Jareth needs to be a mercurial figure who would continually throw Sarah off balance emotionally. When I first met David Bowie, it was in his dressing room. The workshop had made him a little flute out of bone. His immediate response was delight, and he leapt up onto the dressing table, crouched down, and played some notes. It was an astonishing transformation. Before me hunkered an invocation of Pan. My instinct was to step back as my heart leaped. David laughed as Bowie laughed, and stepped back down. The spell was broken, and he was just David again. But I had momentarily been transported to an ancient mythological space, where fauns and satyrs were tangible. Our Goblin King was no longer a figment of our creative imaginations, but now manifest in the form of Mr. David Bowie. And the fact that that little anecdote made it into the back of this book makes me very, very pleased, and shows that I'm glad they got their first casting choice instead of their other casting decisions that included Sting and Michael Jackson. But I'm glad that David was the one that got the role, because I don't think anyone else could have quite done it the way that he did, even if it provided a little bit of childhood nightmare fuel, just a little. And it's an underappreciated film. Sure, it's strange and it's not perfect, but it kind of became a cult classic for a reason. It does resonate with people. Sure, when you first start the film, everybody will bitch and complain about Jennifer Connelly's acting, but when you consider the fact that the character of Sarah starts out as a rather petulant brat, and then sort of learns her lesson and goes through this very obviously metaphorical journey of growing into adulthood and getting over herself, it makes a little bit more sense why she's so annoying to start with. The beautiful visuals, the very linear yet twisty-turny storytelling is very charming, and 80s fantasy is not like modern fantasy. It's not all watered down. It's a little bit preposterous, and I really will always love that film, to the point of doing something that's potentially foolish enough, such as getting a Labyrinth tattoo and painting lots of Labyrinth clothing and sculpting this out of polymer clay and painting it to look like it was metal. It's kind of a very artistic type of film, and it's appreciated by fringe culture a little bit more than popular culture for a reason, and it's become a cult favorite for a lot of good reasons, I think. And I do think it has its standing, and people love it within the Gothic community as well, because of the really fantastic aesthetic decisions on Jareth's wardrobe, and because of this darker fairy tale concept, which is always appreciated. It goes in with romanticism and the fantastical that do make up subsections of the Gothic culture, so that's a bonus too. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed my little ramble and a little bit of love for my favorite film as it hits 30 this year. Till next time, Darklings.